He never talked much about his father, just said he was a mailman in Ohio. But when the old dog died, a strange letter arrived, no stamp, just a collar. By the time he opened it, it was too late. Now he is walking the old road, with tears in his eyes. Part 1. The Invisible Man. Lee Thomas did not tell his college roommate what his father did. Not because he was ashamed. Exactly. Just did not want the questions. The looks. The assumptions. It is complicated, he would say, if pressed. But it was not. Not really. His father, Franklin Thomas, was a mailman, 40 years on Route 6, rain or shine. Union retiree, wore the same sun-faded cap every day until it barely had a bill left. That was who he was. That was what he did. Lee had not been home to Mapleton, Ohio, in nearly a year now. College in Cincinnati gave him a reason to stay gone. Excuses were easy: exams, internships, new people. What was harder to admit was that he did not know how to talk to the man anymore. Their conversations were short. Weather, grades, dog still alive. Then silence. The dog, Scout, had been a family member more than a pet. Part shepherd, part mystery mutt, loyal as gravity. Scout used to walk every step of the mail route with Franklin. At the end of the day, both would come home with the same tired eyes and muddy boots or paws. Ellie remembered once must have been 7 or 8 when a snowstorm hit and school was cancelled. He would followed his dad and Scout down the frozen sidewalk, clutching a thermos of cocoa. His father had smiled at him that day. A rare, gentle kind of smile. Ellie had almost forgotten that until now. It was a Wednesday when the message came. Just a text. Scout's not doing well. Vet says it may be time. Letting you know. No love, Dad. No call me. Just letting you know. Ellie stared at the screen longer than he meant to. He thought about replying. He did not. There was a group study in the library that night, then takeout with Mara, then a paper due Friday. Life moved. It always moved. By Saturday, the guilt had faded. He figured if it was serious, his dad would be called again. He always repeated himself. It was a habit Ellie found annoying, to be honest. So when he opened his mailbox outside the dorm that morning, he was not expecting anything. Bills came by email now, packages by text alert. Nobody sent real letters anymore. But there it was, a small brown envelope. No stamp, no return address, just his name, handwritten in a shaky scrawl. Lee Thomas, and stuck to the top corner, not glued, but tied with an old string, was Scout's collar. The same battered leather with the tiny jingle bell Ellie used to listen for on cold nights. He had not heard it in years. He stood there a long time, other students brushing past him. No one noticed. Inside the envelope was a folded scrap of paper, the same kind his father used to scribble grocery lists on. I figured this might get your attention. If you are reading this, Scout is gone. He was tired. So we took one last walk down Route 6. Just us. That was it. No signature. No more. Lee's throat went dry. He looked down at the collar in his hand and thought he might throw up. There were tears in his eyes before he knew what they were. But he did not cry. Not yet. He slid the note back in the envelope and tucked the collar in his coat pocket. His roommate was still sleeping. Campus was quiet that morning. He sat on his bed and stared out the window at the trees turning gold. Scout Woodville loved this season. Leaves to chase, squirrels to bark at, crisp air to carry his breath. He wondered if his father had walked the same route that day. Wondered if he said goodbye to the people on Maple Street. To the old man in the red flannel who always left a Gatorade on the porch. To Miss Delaney, who called Scout her mail dog. Illy should have called. He should have come home last Thanksgiving. Or maybe the summer before that. He could have at least asked about the dog, or the route, or his dad's heart problems. But he did not. He pulled the envelope out again and flipped it over. Nothing, just smudged fingerprints and the faint smell of wet grass. And then he saw it, tucked inside, nearly hidden in the crease of the paper, another scrap. This one folded even smaller. It was written in the same hand. Shakier now. If you never open this, I will understand. But if you do, walk it once for me. Walk the route. Just once. Take Scout with you. If you can. Ellie felt something crack open deep in his chest. He looked at the calendar on his wall. Midterms were next week. His bank balance was low. His to-do list was full. Still, he reached into his drawer and pulled out a pair of boots he had not worn since senior year. The laces were frayed, the soles thin, but they would walked Mapleton sidewalks before. He held the collar tight in one hand, and that night he booked a one-way bus ticket. Part 2, the walk back. The Greyhound bus smelled like old gum and floor cleaner. Ellie sat near the back, a window seat, collar in his coat pocket, backpack half zipped at his feet. Mapleton was only 4 hours away, but the miles stretched longer than memory, longer than apology. He had not told anyone he was going. No call to his father, no message to his roommate, not even a goodbye to Mara. Just got on the bus, quiet, like the man he never quite understood. Rain tapped against the glass as the bus pulled off the interstate. He stared out at the long oil fields, yellowed and soft with October, the kind of flat, familiar landscape that used to bore him. It felt like stepping back into a house he once lived in but forgot how to enter. The Mapleton station had not changed. Still a cracked bench under a crooked metal roof. Still the mural of a smiling farmer and a dog, both faded like a dream someone else had. Illy stepped off the bus into cold air and mud. He adjusted his jacket and started walking. It was not far to the house on Ashbury Street. The town was barely 6 blocks end to end. As he passed Maple Pharmacy, he saw Delaney through the window. She was bagging cough drops. Her grey bun had thinned, but her eyes still sparkled. He almost waved, but did not. At the house, the porch light was off. The siding looked more weathered than he remembered. The gutters drooped at the corners. No mail piled up, but no pumpkins or wreaths either. He knocked. No answer. Waited. Still nothing. He tried the handle. Unlocked. The scent of old carpet and coffee grounds wrapped around him. He stepped inside. It was quiet. Not silent, just still. The living room looked the same. Same recliner, same crocheted blanket, same little ceramic dog Scout had once knocked over chasing a squirrel through the screen door. There was no sign of his father, only a single envelope on the coffee table. His name. Again, but the handwriting this time was weaker. The loops on the E did not quite close. He opened it slowly. I do not know if you will ever see this, but just in case you do, I am at County General. Hot got tired before I did. Didn't he want to call? Didn't want to make you feel guilty or bound. I have made peace with a lot of things. Scout went peacefully, just curled up by the mailbox and closed his eyes. If you come back, walk the route. That is all I would ask. Not for me. For him, there is a spare key in the cookie jar. Take the old satchel if you want to. The uniform S in the closet still smells like winter. Sorry about that. Ali set the letter down with trembling hands. He moved through the house slowly now, like a man unsure he was allowed to enter. The cookie jar was still shaped like a football helmet. Inside, the key. In the hallway closet, a faded USP satchel with cracked leather straps. And hanging just beside it the blue-gray coat. It looked heavier than he remembered. He did not try it on. Instead, he opened the door and stepped back outside, collar in hand. The next morning was cold. Sharp air, with a bite of frost at the edges. Ellie pulled his hoodie up and stepped out at dawn. He did not wear the uniform, just the satchel, just the collar. Ashbury Street was the first leg. 14 mailboxes. He counted. Every driveway held a memory shoveling snow. Scraping knees. Watching Scout chase a plastic bag like it was a rabbit. At the corner of Briar Lane, he passed the willow tree where he once tied Scout's leash while helping his dad carry a package. The tree looked older now, but it still swayed like it remembered him. Delaney was sitting on her porch in a quilted coat. She squinted. Ali Thomas. He stopped. She rose slowly, holding the railing with both hands. Your dad used to give Scout a treat right here. Every Thursday. Ali nodded. He did not trust his voice. He told me you were studying something big. Engineering. Economics. Ellie managed. But, yeah, he was proud. You know, she said softly. Never said it outright. But it was in the way he said your name. Ellie swallowed hard. I have not seen him lately. She added, I assumed. He is in the hospital. Ali said. Finally. Heart. She nodded. Not surprised. That man carried more than mail. They stood in silence. Then she reached inside her cardigan and pulled something out, a tiny dog biscuit. Still carry one? She smiled. Habit? Ellie took it and slipped it into the satchel. Thanks. He kept walking. At Maple Grove Church, someone had left a pumpkin by the door with a note. Thank you, Thomas. A Gracie, age 6. It was not new, but it had not rotted either. Ely paused, touched the stem gently, and imagined his father standing there in the snow, mailbox flag up, Scout at his heel. He pulled the collar from his coat and ran his thumb over the metal tag. The name was faded, but it was still there. Scout did not know what he was doing, really, only that it felt like something unfinished was being touched again, that some old knot deep in his chest was beginning to loosen. He walked another street, then another, satchel swinging at his side, collar in hand, and with every step, it felt less like pretending and more like remembering. By the time the sun dipped low over Mapleton's grain silos, he would finish the full route. 29 mailboxes, 3 loose dogs, 1 little girl who waved from a window. He stopped at the last house, the corner of Maple and Pine, where he, Scout, and his dad used to stop and split a granola bar. The steps creaked as he sat. From his pocket, he took the final letter, the one he had not read yet, the one that said, "Only open when you are ready." He held it for a long while, then slipped it back into the satchel. Part 3, the letter he almost didn't read. The satchel rested on his lap like a weight from another life. Ellie stared down at the sealed envelope. The paper was soft and yellowing, creased at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times before it ever reached him. Only open when you are ready. He had no idea when his father had written it. Could we been days ago? Could we been last year? Could we been for another version of him entirely? Ellie sat on the old porch at Maple and Pine until the sky turned violet. Then he opened it. I am not good at talking. You probably noticed that it is easier to walk and work than to say things plain. But there are things I want you to know. About Scout. About the job. About me. Scout did not suffer. He slowed down. Same way I have. He stopped eating. I knew it was time. I sat with him out back, under the porch light, and he rested his head in my lap. Just like when you were small. He was a good boy. Always waited at the door, never ran off. You could count on him. That is what I always wanted to be for you, someone you could count on. Even if I did not say it well. I did not have college money for you. Not the way I hoped. Your mom and I tried, but after the layoffs and the roof leak and everything else, we just could not. So I worked longer, took extra shifts, cut corners on myself, let go of the life insurance policy and the dental plan, made sure the heating worked and you had a winter coat. I never told you, because it was not your burden to carry. But I want you to know, everything I had, I spent loving you the only way I knew how. Ely paused, throat tight. He looked around at the quiet street. No traffic, just the buzz of a streetlight and the soft rustle of wind in dry leaves. Scout was the last piece of us all together. When he went, I felt the floor drop out. So I wrote this letter. Not to guilt you, not to draw you back, but to tell you I never saw you as ungrateful. I saw you as young and scared and trying to be your own man. That is how I knew you were mine. I never needed you to be proud of my job. I just needed you to know I was proud of you. And I still am. By the time he reached the last line, Ali's vision blurred. If this is goodbye, let it be a good one. But if there is still time, come sit with me a while. I am far. Dad. Ellie folded the letter with trembling fingers. That night, he stayed in the house on Ashbury Street, slept on the old couch with Scout's collar tucked under his hand. It did not feel like home anymore. But it did not feel like a stranger's place either. More like a room he had not entered in too long. The next morning, Ellie walked down to County General Hospital. It sat on the edge of town, low and grey and smelling faintly of antiseptic and overcooked oatmeal. The kind of place that whispered endings. He gave his father's name at the front desk. The nurse nodded slowly. Room 207, West Wing. She hesitated, then added, "He is stable, but he is tired." The hallway buzzed with wheelchairs, beeping monitors, the soft coughs of age. He knocked once, then opened the door. Franklin Thomas looked smaller than Ellie. Remembered? Thinner, more fragile, like someone had taken a man and folded him into himself. But the eyes were the same. They lifted slowly, met his, and widened. It was a whisper, but it was enough. Ellie stepped inside, sat down without speaking. For a moment, they just looked at each other. No questions. No explanations. The silence between them did not ache like before. It simply settled. Then his father smiled. Crooked, wary, but real. "You got the letter?" Ali nodded. "All of them." Frank chuckled softly. "Didn't think the collar would make it through the mail." "I did not either," Ali said. "But it did." A pause. "You walked the route." "Every step." Another pause. "And Scout?" Franklin's voice cracked. Ellie reached into his coat, pulled out the collar, and laid it gently in his father's palm. Frank closed his hand around it like he was holding breath itself. Later, as they talked, Franklin mentioned the house. "The mortgage's paid off," he said softly. "Finally. Took 40 years." He chuckled. "I was going to get the roof redone, maybe look into a senior life plan. But then the furnace went again." He shook his head. "Never enough left over." "You know," Ellie did not say anything, just listened. There were truths buried in that sentence. Truths about why there was no college fund, why there was no second dog, and none of it needed forgiveness. Only understanding. Before he left, Franklin handed Ellie a battered tin box from the hospital drawer. Inside, some old receipts, a copy of his will, a tiny bundle of cash. Mostly fives. "Rainy day money," he said. Ellie's fingers brushed a slip of yellow paper at the bottom. It was a life insurance quote. Never signed. He looked up. Frank just said, "Didn't qualify after 60. Then he looked away. Ellie left the hospital with the satchel over his shoulder, the collar inside, and the sense that something sacred had passed between them. Not words, not apologies, but something heavier, something true. That night, he sat at the kitchen table, pulled out a blank sheet of paper, and began to write his own letter. He did not know what it would say, only that someone, someday, might need to read it. Part 4. When the rain comes. Rain started falling just after midnight. Not the kind that lashes windows or pounds roofs, just a quiet, steady whisper. The kind you do not notice until it is soaked through your shoulders. Ellie sat by the window in the old house on Ashbury Street. Lights off. Watching the droplets race each other down the glass. He had not slept. Didn't he want to? His father was still at County General, stable but weak. They had not said goodbye, but they had not said much else either. And now Ellie was alone again in the house, where he would once fallen asleep to the sound of Scout's paws pacing the floor. The house groaned in the night like an old man shifting in his chair. Radiator clicking, wind slipping under the doorframe, a drip from somewhere in the kitchen. He did not mind the silence anymore. It felt honest. In the morning, he boiled coffee in the dented old kettle and sat at the table with the stack of letters his father never sent. Most were half-written, some just lines. I saw your name in the paper, the Dean's list. Tried to sign up for one of those life policies again. They said the meds disqualify me. Don't worry about money. I cash out the last savings bond. So much he would never heard. So much his father never got to say, not out loud. Anyway, the doorbell rang around 9. Ellie answered it in a sweatshirt and flannel pants. Standing on the porch was a man in his 60s. Silver beard, denim jacket, postal cap. Didn't mean to intrude, the man said. Name's Rick. I took over Route 6 after your dad. Ellie blinked. I did not know anyone had. Rick smiled kindly. Nobody can replace Frank. I am just walking his boots. He handed Ellie a small brown envelope. No return address. Postmarked Mapleton Station. Inside was a sympathy card. To the family of Franklin Thomas, he delivered our mail for 30 years. But more than that, he delivered kindness. Ellie felt the words settle deep. Rick hesitated. Your dad kept the old place running longer than anyone expected. I heard about the furnace. Town was trying to get a program going for seniors. Something about heating subsidies and deferred maintenance. But it never got off the ground. Ellie nodded slowly. He would seen the rust on the baseboards, the patch job on the roof, felt the cold air snake up from the basement. He did not talk much, Rick said, but he was the first guy to shovel his neighbor's steps, left dog treats in people's mailboxes. A pause. Even left one in mine after I replaced him. Said, for your Scout, whoever he might be. Ely smiled. A real one. Rick tipped his cap. If you need anything, you know where to find me. Then he was gone. Later, Ellie sat in his dad's recliner with Scout's collar on the armrest. He opened his laptop for the first time since returning home. Logged into his student loan dashboard. The numbers blinked coldly back at him. Tuition, housing, interest. It felt like another language. He thought about what his dad said about cashing out savings bonds, about not qualifying for life insurance, about the furnace that barely coughed heat. And he thought, how many things did he sacrifice just to keep me moving forward? That afternoon, he drove his dad's sold pickup to the hospital. It rattled at 40 miles an hour. Brakes soft. The glove box full of dog hair and spare gloves. He stopped at Mapleton Hardware on the way. Picked up a bag of salt for the front steps. and a small can of paint the same faded blue-grey as the old USPA's uniform. At the hospital, Franklin was propped up watching a muted football game. "You drove?" he asked. Ely shrugged. Didn't he want the bus again? His father smirked. "I picked up some salt for the steps," Eli added. "And that bedroom window still leaking." Franklin looked away, blinking faster than usual. Ely sat down. "We will patch it, one thing at a time." A silence stretched between them. Then his father said, "You are staying a while." Ely nodded. "Until it feels less wrong to leave." Frank chuckled. "You sound like your mother." They sat in the hospital room while rain slid down the outside glass. On the way out, Ellie stopped by the billing office. "Just checking," he told the woman behind the desk. "Wanted to see what is coming next." The woman tapped keys. "Medicare covers a portion, but he has got some gaps, no supplemental coverage. Right now we are holding on a few charges until discharge. Meds, monitoring. He has opted out of long-term options." Ely frowned. "What does that mean?" She gave a kind smile. "It means he did not want to be a burden." Ellie left the hospital and stood in the parking lot for a long while. Rain slicked the pavement. The wind bit at his neck. In his pocket, the collar jingled faintly. He looked up at the grey sky and whispered, "Not a burden," then drove home. That evening, he pulled out a fresh envelope, wrote his own name on the front, and slipped a note inside. "You do not get to go back, but you get to go with them a little longer, and when the time comes to let go, do it with both hands open." He placed the letter in the mailbox. Flag up, just in case someone was still walking the road. Part 5. The things we carry. The smell of paint lingered in the house for 2 days. Ellie had opened every window he could, even propped the back screen with a book. Still, the scent of fresh effort clung to the walls like breath held too long. He would painted the door frame and the porch railing not because they needed it, but because his father never got around to it. And now, every brushstroke felt like a word they had not said out loud. That morning, Illy sat cross-legged on the living room floor, sorting through an old metal filing cabinet. Bills, receipts, letters from the Department of Veterans Affairs he did not even know his dad had in contact with. In the back drawer, he found a yellow envelope labeled in pen. "If I can't walk it anymore." Inside was a list, typed but corrected by hand. "Cancel electric account #402811. Call Herald Roofing, may still offer payment plan. Notify Postal Union, pension paperwork incomplete. Mortgage, paid underlined twice. Contact Illy if I have not already." Illy set the list down. The words mortgage, paid hit harder than he expected. All those years, his father never took vacations, never bought a new car, wore the same coat until it frayed at the cuffs. And this was the finish line. Not a trip to Florida, not a fishing boat, just a checkmark beside a house with leaky windows and a broken step. That afternoon, Illy returned to County General. His father was awake, eyes following the clouds through the hospital window. "You painted the porch," Frank said without turning. Illy raised an eyebrow. "You have a spy in town." Mapleton does not keep secrets, his father said. Ellie chuckled. Well, the railings no longer tetanus-colored. Frank gave a tired smile. There was a pause. Then Ellie said softly, I found your list. His father nodded slowly. Didn't he want to leave you with a mess? You did not. Ellie said, you left a map. They sat together for an hour, talked about the time Scout jumped through the neighbor's screen door chasing a squirrel, the time Ellie broke his wrist trying to rollerblade on gravel, the time Frank lost a paycheck down a storm drain and spent 2 hours fishing it out with a rake and half a broomstick. They did not talk about the unpaid medical bills, or the letter from the postal union marked incomplete, or the retirement paperwork still unsigned. But the weight of it hung in the room, and Ellie realized something. His father had not been trying to make a legacy. He had just been trying to leave less behind. That evening, Ellie stood in the garage. Dust danced in the light from the single bulb overhead. Scout's old food bin still sat in the corner, empty. The leash hung like a quiet prayer on the nail by the door. Ellie reached up and took it down. It still smelled faintly of earth and fur. He gripped it tightly, then stepped outside. Mapleton's Road 6 had not changed. Same mailboxes, same cracks in the sidewalk, same front porch steps he used to sit on, backpack at his feet, waiting for his dad to come home. But this time, he did not walk it alone. A golden retriever mix trotted beside him, tail high, tongue out. Her name was Penny, a rescue from the shelter 2 towns over. He had not meant to bring her home, just went in to look. But she would, pressed her nose to the glass when she saw the collar in his hand. Now she walked like she would always known the path, like Scout had whispered the directions before he left. They stopped at the corner house with the yellow shutters. A woman came out with a basket of muffins. Your dad used to take one every Friday, she said. Even when he said he was cutting back on sugar, Ellie took one. Still warm. Thank you. At Briar Lane, teenage boy called from his porch. Thomas's son, right? Yeah. The boy nodded toward Penny. Nice dog. Not as scary as the last one. Ellie laughed. Scout just had strong opinions. At the end of the road, Ellie sat on the same steps as before. Penny curled up at his feet. He pulled out the last envelope from the satchel, one he had not opened yet. It was not addressed to him. It read, "For whoever walks this next." Inside was a short note. "This road belongs to someone who shows up. Rain, snow, grief still shows up. If that is you, thank you. If that is not you yet, keep walking. You will get there. FT." Ellie folded the paper and placed it gently back inside. Then he looked up at the sky. The sun had begun breaking through the clouds, and for the first time in days, he felt something ease inside him. That night, back at the house, Ellie stood in the kitchen with the radio on low. He was making stew from an old recipe his mother used to keep, clipped to the fridge. While the broth simmered, he opened the notebook his father had kept. Jotted in the margins were lists. Grocery prices, notes about weather delays, scribbled reminders to call the furnace guy. But halfway through the pages, one line stood alone. "If Ellie ever comes back, tell him I am proud." Ellie closed the notebook and leaned against the counter. The house was still drafty, the steps still creaked, and the roof would need work before winter. But he would figure it out. Always thought strength came from moving on. Turns out, it comes from staying put. Outside, Penny barked once. He opened the door, stepped onto the porch. Scout's collar hung beside the mailbox, catching a bit of the fading light. And the flag was still up, just in case someone needed to send something that could not wait. Part 6 letters never mailed. It rained again the next morning. Not a storm, not a downpour, just a slow, steady drizzle that painted the sidewalks dark and made the town smell like wet leaves and soil. Illy sat by the window with a mug of reheated coffee, flipping through a shoebox he found in the hallway closet. Inside were letters, dozens. Some sealed, some not. Most were addressed to him. All had never been mailed. Some were just a line or two. "You were quiet on the phone. I did not know if I should ask. It is okay if you do not come for Thanksgiving. Just knowing you are okay is enough. Scout still checks your room at night." Others were longer, pages of wondering, missing, remembering. There was one, dated 5 years back, that began, "I dreamt last night you were 8 again, running beside me while Scout barked at the wind." Ellie held that one in his hands for a long time. By noon, he drove back to County General. His father had been moved to a quieter room, 2nd floor. Corner window. The view was of a stand of maple trees, still holding onto their last red leaves. "Brought you something," Ali said, setting the shoebox on the bedside tray. Franklin raised an eyebrow. "You digging through closets now?" "Only the ones marked do not touch." Frank gave a weak smile. That box was supposed to be burned. "You know." Ellie opened the lid. "Good thing I did not ask." His father reached in, pulled out a letter, and turned it over in his hands. "I wrote most of those late," he said. Didn't he know what I would say if I mailed them? Or what you would say back? I probably would not have said anything. Ely admitted. "Not then." Frank did not respond. Just nodded. They sat in silence while the heart monitor beeped, slow and steady. Then Ellie said, "Some of these were beautiful. They were just pages." Frank replied, "Never had the nerve to send him." "Well," Ali said, "they got where they needed to. Eventually." That evening, Ellie stopped by Mapleton Grocery. He had not been inside in years. The cashier, a woman in her 60s with silver curls, smiled as he approached the register. "You are Frank Thomas' boy, are not you?" "Guilty. He used to leave his mailbag by the door and help me. Hallie stock milk when he had a bad back." Ali nodded. "Sounds like him." She pointed at the scarf around his neck. "That Scout's." He looked down. It was Scout's bandana. Faded red. He would tied it there that morning without thinking. "Yeah," he said. "Found it in a drawer." She smiled. That dog knew every customer better than we did. Back at the house, the heating kicked in with a groan. It barely warmed the hallway, but Ailey left it on. He figured it was time to stop putting off what needed doing. That night, he sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Search. Heating Repair Assistance IO for Seniors. He clicked through a few local programs. Most required paperwork, proof of income, application wait times. One site offered an emergency fund, but the form had expired. He bookmarked 3 pages anyway, then opened a spreadsheet and started listing expenses. Roof estimate from Harold, $3,800. Hospital bills, unknown. Prescriptions, $240/month. Heating, unreliable. Insurance, none. Savings, $600 cash in the team. Not much to build on, but now he knew. The next morning, he called the hospital billing office. "Yes, I am his son," he said. "I would like to go over his statement and options moving forward." The woman was kind, walked him through everything. After a while, Ellie set the phone down and rubbed his temples. His father had deferred charges for months. Skipped refills, chose generic when he needed name brand, declined cardiac rehab, all to avoid being a burden. Illy stared out the window at the mailboxes lining the opposite curb. His dad had delivered to each one faithfully. Ely thought it was his turn to carry something. That afternoon, he picked up Penny from the backyard and walked Route 6 again. This time, the leash felt different in his hand. Lighter, maybe, or heavier in a better way. He stopped at the corner near Jasper Street. There, on a bench, sat an elderly man in a thick coat. A cane rested against his knee. "Used to see your dad come through here," the man said without prompting. Rain, snow, did not matter. Ali nodded. The man squinted. "You the college boy?" Was. Ali said, still figuring it out. "Your old man carried himself quiet, but he saw everything." The man continued. "He helped my wife file her Medicare paperwork. She never told me till after he passed by the last time." Ellie blinked. He said, "It is not about mail. It is about showing up when no one else will." The man stood slowly, using his cane. "You look like him. You know." "So," and he said quietly. That night, Penny curled at his feet as Ellie sat by the fire, a space heater. Really? But the flicker of the flame decal felt close enough. He took one of his father's blank letter pages and began to write. Not a message to anyone, just a memory. "We were walking in snow. Scout was ahead. Dad let me carry the satchel, even though it was heavy," he said. "Sometimes you carry things just because they need to get where they are going. I did not understand then." He folded the page, slipped it into the envelope marked for later, and set it beside the collar on the mantel. Part 7 Scouts last winter. The first real snow came early that year. Mid-November, and already the sidewalks of Mapleton wore a thin white coat, like a memory just beginning to fade. Ellie stood at the edge of the yard, one hand in his coat pocket, the other gently resting on Penny's back. She sniffed the wind, then pressed closer to his leg. The cold did not seem to bother her much, but Ellie, it had a way of finding the hollow spots. He looked toward the mailbox, where Scout's collar still hung from a hook. Snow dusted the leather now. The tag clinked once in the wind, like a soft reminder. Inside, the house was holding up, but barely. The furnace coughed each time it tried to start, as if it were protesting the season. Ali kept the space heaters on, tried to ration the warmth. He would call the heating assistance line again, and this time, someone answered. "Applications closed last week," the woman said kindly, "but I will put you on the list for early spring." Spring, too far for comfort, but too close to give up. He thanked her anyway. Afterward, he logged into the hospital portal. There it was again, the same red numbers, the same past due line blinking like an open wound. He closed the tab, then opened another. Search, financial help for unpaid medical bills Oyo seniors. It was becoming a habit. That evening, Ellie found a folder tucked between cookbooks in a kitchen drawer. Inside, Scouts vet records, rabies tag receipts, bills, notes scribbled from a mobile vet named Drew. Hampton. November 17th, 3:20 p. Hind legs weak. Trouble getting up. May need ramp soon. December 1st, appetite down. Started pain meds. Discussed end-of-life options. Owner declined euthanasia for now. Wants more time. Understandable. The last note read, December 22nd, Scout curled up outside mailbox. Breathing slow. No visible pain. Owner called just to say thank you. Ellie closed the folder with trembling hands. He remembered that winter now. He would been too busy with exams, too caught up in his world of professors and essays and job fairs. His father had texted. Scout slowing down, got him a blanket for the porch. Ellie had answered 3 days later with, "Hope he is okay. Finals week. Talk soon." But soon never came. The next day, he visited Hampton's clinic, a small place near the edge of town, tucked between a laundromat and a tire shop. A bell jingled as he stepped inside. The vet looked up from behind a stack of files. "Can I help?" Then recognition. "You are Frankus' boy," he said. Hampton came around the counter and offered his hand. "Your father was one of the kindest men I have ever treated an animal for. He never let Scout suffer, never missed an appointment, even when he could not pay right away." Ellie swallowed. "He did not tell me any of that." The vet gave a sad smile. "He would not. Pride is a tricky thing." They sat down, and Hampton brought out a folder. Scout's records again, this time with a few personal notes added in ink. One read. Client declined. Euthanasia service. Chose home passing. Insisted dog pass where he first waited for Ellie after school. Ellie felt something crack wide open in his chest. He died by the mailbox. He asked softly. The vet nodded. "Your dad was with him the whole time." Said it was the most peaceful ending he would ever seen. Ellie sat in silence, blinking hard. He paid off the final bill last January. Hampton added. Said he would skip his own meds for a while, if that is what it took. I tried to waive it, but he insisted. That night, Ellie stood by the mailbox in the snow. No one else was around. The street was quiet, Still, dim porch lights flickering behind drawn curtains. He knelt down and pressed his gloved hand into the snow. "This is where you waited," he whispered. "For me. Always." He pictured Scout curled beside this post, tail tucked, head low, ears flicking at every passing sound, waiting for the boy who no longer lived there, for the boy too busy to call back. "I am here now," Ali said. The wind blew sharp, but he did not move. The next morning, Ellie opened a fresh page in his father's notebook. At the top, he wrote, "Winter budget December." He made 2 columns. "What is needed?" Heating oil. Vet visit for Penny limp. Back leg. Groceries. Snow melt salt. Hospital balance minimum payment. Internet bill. What is not? New phone. Streaming subscription. Fancy coffee. Excuses. At the bottom, he added a final note. "You can fix everything in one season, but you can start." Later that day, he called Hampton and scheduled a checkup for Penny. "She is limping a little," Ellie explained. "Probably nothing, but I would rather catch it early." The vet agreed. When he hung up, Ellie looked toward the living room. Scout's collar hung by the fireplace now. Next to it, Penny's new tag, engraved just the day before. They were not replacements for each other, just chapters in the same quiet story. That evening, as snow fell thick again, Ellie stepped onto the porch with Penny and walked to the mailbox. Inside was a single envelope. No stamp, no return address, just the words, "Keep walking." He opened it, a note on plain white paper. "Your dad walked through every winter like it was spring on the other side. You are doing the same. We see you. Mapleton sees you." Ellie looked down the street. No one there. But someone had walked by. Someone had left that message. He folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. And for the first time in a long while, he did not feel invisible. Part 8. What is left behind. The attic had not been touched in years. You could smell time in the dust, in the way the air clung to your lungs. Ellie pulled the cord, and the single bulb buzzed to life, barely lighting the corners. He climbed the creaking ladder with a flashlight tucked under his chin. Penny whined at the bottom step. "You stay there," he said gently. "Too many nails for curious paws." There was not much up there. A box of Christmas lights tangled beyond rescue. A broken record player. A milk crate full of National Geographics from the 80s. And then, tucked beneath an old army blanket, a wooden crate marked "Scout and More." Ellie sat down on the floorboards. Heart thudding. He opened the lid slowly. Inside were Scout's puppy collar, his first chew toy half eaten, and a small envelope taped shut. "For when he is gone." Ellie peeled it open. The handwriting was his mother's. "Frank, if you are reading this, Scout is gone, and I hope you gave him the softest goodbye you could. Remember what I said when we first brought him home. He is going to teach our son what loyalty looks like." He did. He also taught us, let Ellie grieve in his own way, but do not close up on him. He is your boy, you are his anchor, Even if he does not say it, I know you will carry the silence like you carried that mail bag without complaint. But please, do not carry it alone. Love you always. Ellie sat there for a long time, just breathing. He remembered the chew toy. Scout had hidden it under Ailey's bed for years like it was treasure. He remembered his mom's voice, the way she said anchor when she was tired of hearing them fight. And suddenly, all the years in between felt shorter, like the space between two breaths. Later that afternoon, Ali took the crate downstairs. He set it by the fireplace next to the notebook, the budget sheet, and both collars, not because he needed to see it, because he wanted the house to remember. At the hospital, Franklin was resting. His eyes opened slowly as Ellie entered, and a smile touched the corners of his mouth. I found Scout's box, Ali said, pulling up a chair. Mom wrote you a letter, told you not to shut down. Frank chuckled weakly. Should we known she would leave a note. You listened. Eventually, a pause. Then Frank added, I did not carry it all alone. Not really. Scout took half. Your mom took more. Ellie looked down. Guess it is my turn now. His father said, it is not about carrying it alone. It is about knowing who to hand it to when you are tired. Ellie did not reply, but he reached over, placed his hand on his father's, and they sat that way until visiting hours ended. That night, Ellie sat with a calculator and notepad, staring at numbers that did not line up. He would made minimum payments on the hospital bill, called the vet clinic again, and set up a monthly plan for Penny. Set aside enough for heating oil to last 3 more weeks if they kept the thermostat low. But even with the frugal list, the numbers blurred red. He thought about the streaming subscription he cancelled, the coffee shop he stopped visiting, the insurance form on the fridge he still had not filled out, a low-cost accident policy the town offered to caregivers. He was not ready to call himself that yet, but it was getting harder to argue otherwise. The next morning, he walked Route 6 with Penny. The snow had crusted into ice, crunching under their steps, but the air was clean, and the sky bright in that way only winter skies can be cold, blue, wide. At the second house, a woman waved from the porch. Thomas, she called. Ellie blinked. That is my father. She came down the steps, holding something wrapped in wax paper. He always brought my son's birthday card himself. Said he wanted to make sure it got there on the day. Ellie took the bundle. Thank you, he told me once. She said that delivering mail was not about envelopes. It was about promises. Ellie smiled. That sounds like him. Back home, he opened the wax paper. It was banana bread, still warm. He took a bite and felt something soften in his chest. Sometimes kindness arrives when you are not looking, like letters without stamps. That afternoon, he cleaned out the garage. He found the snow shovel, rusted and chipped, and leaned it against the door. He found an unopened bag of Scout's kibble, expired now, but still sealed. He put it aside for the animal shelter, and he found one last box labeled simply, Taxes Plife. Inside, all to pension. Correspondence. A half-completed application for Medicaid assistance. and a hand-scrawled note. Didn't he apply? Might be taking from someone who needs it more. Ely closed his eyes. His father had refused help he qualified for out of pride, or guilt, or both, and yet he would be given the coat off his back to a stranger in a storm. He folded the forms and placed them on the table. He would apply for what was needed now. This was not about pride anymore. It was about staying warm through the winter. That night, the power flickered once. Then again. Ellie held his breath, but the lights stayed on. He went to the thermostat and turned it down just a little, then wrapped himself in a blanket, pulled Penny close, and opened one of his father's last letters. If this house is still standing, it is not because I built it right. It is because I kept showing up to fix what broke. That is what being a man means. Not avoiding the cracks. Learning how to patch them. Love, Dad. Ellie pressed the paper to his chest. Penny nuzzled into his leg. Outside, the snow kept falling. And inside, the warmth held not just from the heater, but from everything his father left behind. Part 9, the last. Wrote, Franklin Thomas passed on a Tuesday. No fanfare. No machines beeping in panic. Just the slow silence of a heart deciding it had done enough. The nurses said it was peaceful that he would fallen asleep with a letter clutched in his hand. One of his own, addressed simply to the boy who always walked ahead. They gave it to Ellie in a small envelope, the corners soft with wear. He did not open it. Not yet. He was not ready to read the end. The funeral was small. A few old neighbors. Rick from the postal route. Delaney in her purple scarf, handing out mints like prayers. They held it in the church basement, nothing grand. Just coffee in paper cups and a framed photo beside a vase of pine boughs. Scout's collar sat next to it, resting on folded blue-gray cloth. Frank's old uniform shirt. No eulogy, just a quiet gathering. People telling stories not for the crowd, but for the person sitting closest. Illy did not speak. He just listened. Afterward, he walked home with Penny. Snow clung to her fur in tiny pearls. She did not shake it off. She walked slow, as if she understood the weight of the air. At the mailbox, he paused. Someone had left a single white rose in the box. No note. No card. Just that he carried it inside like it was made of glass. That night, the house felt colder. Not physically, the space heater hummed on, but in that way a room changes when it knows someone is not coming back. Illy sat at the kitchen table, the unopened letter in his hands. Penny lay at his feet, tail thumping once before going still. He turned the envelope over. No seal, just a fold. He opened it. You were always 10 steps ahead of me. From the day you first ran down the sidewalk without training wheels. From the moment you said I got it and really meant it. I watched you go towards school, college, jobs I could not understand, and I never wanted to slow you down. But I always hoped you would look back. Just once. Not because I needed thanks, but because I missed walking beside you. The tears came quickly. Not sharp, not wrenching. Just slow. Certain, like the first melt of snow in early March. The next morning, Ali called the local office of the Postal Employees Retirement System. He explained who he was, what had happened, what papers he had. The woman on the line was kind. "He never submitted the final form," she said softly, "but he is eligible. It might take a few months. I will walk it through for you." Ali thanked her, voice cracking slightly. After he hung up, he sat back and looked at the stack of documents spread across the kitchen table. He did not know the language of retirement accounts and insurance claims, but he was learning, one paper at a time. Later that day, he walked into town with Penny, stopped at Mapleton Printing and Shipping. He would type something the night before and printed 10 copies, each in a plain white envelope. He walked the old route one last time, placing each envelope into a mailbox just as his father had done thousands of times before. Inside, the note read, "To those who knew Franklin Thomas, thank you for walking beside him. He did not leave with much, but he left with enough, and that is more than most men can say." At the corner of Maple and Pine, Ely sat on the steps where he would first read his father's letter weeks ago. He pulled out Scout's collar, ran a thumb along the faded tag. Beside him, Penny rested her chin on his knee, and Ely said, softly, "I am going to stay, not to the dog, not to the wind, to himself, to the ghost of his father that lingered in mailbox flags and sidewalk cracks, to the boy who once thought leaving was the only way to grow." Over the next few days, Ellie began putting the house in order. He patched the draft under the back door, had a roofer come by for an estimate, scheduled a vet follow-up for Penny's leg, applied for utility assistance, finally filling out the online form that had sat bookmarked for weeks. He mailed in the paperwork for his father's pension and burial insurance. It was not much, but it would cover the last hospital bill and maybe keep the lights on through winter. He made coffee in the old percolator, read the newspaper cover to cover, started a new notebook labeled "Things Worth Keeping." On page, he wrote, "Scout's leash." Mom's handwriting. Dad's quiet. "Penny's weight on my foot. Snow when it falls straight down." One evening, just before Christmas, he got a knock on the door. It was Rick. He held out a manila envelope. "Came to the office late. Thought you might want it." Ellie opened it after Rick left. Inside was a certificate. United States Postal Service. Certificate of Service. Franklin Thomas, 41 years. At the bottom, "For dedicated service." Unwavering reliability, and walking every step. Illy stared at it for a long time, then placed it on the mantel, beside the photo, beside the collar, beside the note his father had written, the one he finally read. That night, Penny lay curled on the rug as the radio played low. Ellie sat with a pen and paper, writing not out of grief, but out of rhythm. The kind that comes from remembering something in your bones. He did not know where the story would go next, but he knew how it began. Once, there was a man who carried letters and never asked for thanks, and a dog who waited at the mailbox, and a boy who forgot how to walk beside them, until it was almost too late. Part 10 delivered. Winter passed slowly in Mapleton, the kind of slow that settles into your bones, where days blend and the world moves quieter, softer. The snowplows came late, the mail came earlier, and the silence left behind by a man like Franklin Thomas was never filled, only felt. But Illy stayed. He fixed what he could, taped the bedroom window until the new pane came in, rewired the porch light, cleaned out the gutters, paid the hospital in small, consistent checks, tiny dents against a bigger stone. It was not glamorous. It was not what he would pictured at 22, but it was real, and it was his. He began writing letters, not emails, not texts. Letters to friends he had not spoken to in years. To Mara, who never really understood why he left school so quickly. To neighbors who shared muffins and kind stories at the funeral. To himself, on days he did not know who he was becoming. He mailed them from the old post office on Elm, the same one his father used to stop in every Friday, just to say hello to the clerk. One day, the clerk said, "You are walking just like him now." Ali nodded. "I am trying." In early spring, the pension check arrived. Not large, not enough to change anything, but it paid the final vet bill and covered Penny's new harness, a better one, for her joints. Illy framed the last hospital receipt, not because it was worth celebrating, but because it meant he could stop holding his breath. The yard began to thaw. Penny pawed at the earth like she remembered, where Scout used to dig. Ellie planted tomatoes in the same patch his mother once tried to grow squash. It all felt cyclical, but not repetitive, more like the rhythm of breath, of return. One afternoon, he stood at the edge of Route 6, where the sidewalk met the gravel road out by the grain elevator. He wore his father's old satchel across his chest. Inside were 10 handwritten letters, not addressed, not sealed, just stories. About Scout, about the sound of boots on snow, about the weight of things we do not say until we think it is too late. He left them in random boxes. No explanation, no signature, just a note at the bottom. If you are reading this, someone showed up, so you are not alone. In late April, a teacher from the elementary school called. "I found something in our lost and found. It is an old mail cap. Has F. Thomas stitched inside." Ellie walked there the next morning. The cap was faded, stiff with time, but unmistakable. He must have left it when he delivered the holiday books last year. She said, "The kids remember him. They still call the mailman Mer." Frank. Ely smiled. He put the cap in his bag. Didn't he clean it? Didn't he need to? That evening, he sat with Penny on the porch, Scout's collar resting in his hand. A young man passed on the sidewalk, earbuds in, hoodie pulled tight. He slowed, looked up. You are Frank's kid, right?" Ali nodded. "My grandma talks about your dad. Said he helped her with her tax forms when her husband died. Just sat there on her porch one afternoon and filled them out." Ellie blinked. "I did not know that." "Yeah." She cried when she heard. The young man said, but then she smiled. Said he always brought her mail with a joke tucked in. He looked down. "I just wanted to say thanks." Then he walked on. That night, Ellie opened the final envelope, the one he would written months ago back in December. He unfolded it. You do not get to go back, but you get to go with them a little longer, and when the time comes to let go, do it with both hands open. He read it once, then twice, then folded it again and slipped it into the satchel. The next morning, he rose early, made coffee in the percolator, fed Penny, opened the front door, and there it was, a small box, no postage. Inside, Scout, Stag, polished clean, and a note, still walking with you. Keep going. Illy stared at it for a long time. Then he smiled, the kind of smile his father had small, worn in, honest. That afternoon, he wrote one more letter, this one addressed, stamped, mailed, to the next Illy, the next kid walking too fast, too far. Inside, it read, once, I forgot to walk beside the people who made me. By the time I remembered, they would stopped walking, but their steps never left. Not in the snow, in me. So I am writing to tell you, there is still time. Just turn around. And with that, he picked up the leash, clipped it to Penny's harness, slung the satchel over his shoulder, then stepped out the door, one more time, not to deliver anything, but to remember how it felt to walk beside someone who loved you. The end.